afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Abu Dhabi Finance Week here at the capital of capital. Ladies and gentlemen, this panel highlights a crucial and strategic initiative led by the ADGM Academy Research Center in partnership with Emirates NBD and Rabdan Academy. Together, we have worked on a machine learning-based alert scoring model that is transforming transaction monitoring processes and significantly enhancing anti-money laundering capabilities. Today, we will dive into the research findings, the challenges faced during implementation, and the broader implications to the financial sector. Starting with Zubin, the research introduces a cutting-edge alert scoring model designed to improve the classification of suspicious transactions by leveraging advanced machine learning techniques. How does a model like this improve anti-money laundering capabilities and capacity?
So if we look at it from something like transaction monitoring is a bit of a double-edged sword. At one end, you want to do the right thing, catching the bad guys and the suspicious transactions. But as we progress, you find so many false positives which come out, and the amount of time that an individual needs to investigate it, etc., is significant. The downside of that is you're not being able to report it out promptly. When the authorities want to clamp down, you have a timeline, and with the speed of transactions, it's imperative that you get it out fast. On the other end of the spectrum is how do you do it? You don't want to set something very conservative to miss out something. So you have a bit of a trade-off between effectiveness and efficiency. And that's been a growing concern as transactions keep growing, red flags keep growing, the output of the systems have grown. So what the model is trying to do is prioritization and identification of transactions, which, based on the model, has a higher probability of turning to be really suspicious. And therefore, you can target your resources to expedite and handle those.
Thank you, Zubin. It's fascinating to hear how these innovations are impacting our day-to-day operations in the financial sector. Dr. Eric, from an academic lens, what makes this project a standout example of translating theoretical AI advancements into practical industry-specific solutions?
Thank you, Rauda. I think there was three things that stood out for me personally for this project. The first one was the innovative approach that was used. Machine learning and the use of AI in the financial sector and other sectors isn't brand new, so to speak. It's been around for a few decades now. But what stood out particularly with this one was the way it was bolted onto existing systems that were already in place. So the rule-based system that was implemented by the banks in the financial sector was able to be added to using this technology. So that in itself was an innovative approach. But also what also stood out was the fact that it was implemented and tested over a significant period of time through a pilot program that was both supervised and unsupervised. So what that enabled us to do was to test it in real time against human analysts to ensure its effectiveness remained exceptionally high. And that's how we got such a great success in terms of reducing the false positives and false negatives, which was one of the key objectives. So it was a standout project from that perspective. But then one of the primary things we wanted to produce, and that the white paper has helped us do, is produce a blueprint for the rest of the sector. And that's what makes this stand out as well, because frequently when academia and industry come together, often it's not published in the way this one has been done. So we've done a white paper, and there's hopefully an academic journal article on the back end of it as well. So what we're hoping is that other industries, particularly in the financial sector, can take this approach and also apply it based on those reports that we've produced.
Thank you, Dr. Eric. Your explanation really highlights the value of innovation, rigorous methodologies, and real-world testing in creating AI solutions that are not only practical but transformative. Zubin, I'll turn back to you. So integrating AI models into existing compliance frameworks is often a complex process. So what specific challenges did Emirates NBD face during this integration, and how were they addressed?
So as Eric mentioned, of course, you have AI, et cetera, in the finance world. But when it comes to the compliance side for the surveillance, there are a bit of a nascent stage at the moment. it is something where you're testing the waters. So at one side, when you're migrating, there's always a reluctance to give up something which is so-called working at the cost of, are you going to miss something? How do you get that fine balance of migrating to something, and as, again, it's a bolt-on. So we had the luxury of trying and testing that. What did come up as a challenge is, of course, training data, because there are too many shades of gray in this particular vertical. It's not a binary. And there's a lot of human bias which goes in. So how do you really go up and ramp it up in terms of the deployment? Also, what comes up is management of expectations. The moment you hear AI, ML, you expect something on a platter. It's a straight through that you're getting one alert and it's going to be a straight SAR, which is not the case. And what did need to be socialized and really got in is, yes, you develop a model, you deploy it, but then there's a lot of effort in terms of maintaining it so that there's no regression and you don't drop the ball down the line. So that governance around the model, selling it, saying, yes, you have something, but there is a journey which has to continuously be there to keep a maintenance. It's like a car. You get it, you don't maintain it, it's going to really go out.
Zubin, your insights highlights the operational hurdles that financial institutions face when adopting to AI. Thank you for this. Dr. Eric, based on your experience, what do you think are the critical success factors for collaborations between academic institutions and the industry partners on projects like this one?
I don't think they change dramatically, specifically for the financial sector. I think they're the same with any industry and academic partnership. And first and foremost, they have to be able to align their objectives. Academia, their currency tends to be new knowledge, research, innovation, and that's usually manifested in patents, academic articles, and so on. Industry tends to have a different objective. It's often financially orientated, profit margins, shareholders, stakeholders, et cetera, So it's important to first find where those two can align, because that's when the conversations can start. And then that opens the second aspect, which is the need for open communication. Particularly when we were working on this project, AI and machine learning, they come from a computer data science background. And although there's some nuances that overlap with the financial sector, they're distinctly different industries. So what happens quite frequently is those two industries speak different languages. So it's important that that continuous communication is omnipresent and those people have open and honest conversations so that they can make sure that they're talking the same language. Otherwise, frustration can build up quite quickly, and sometimes that can lead to relationships to break down. Why is this important? Because fundamentally, what we're seeking to gain access to is data. And particularly like the financial sector, as with any other industry, it holds an awful lot of privately held data, particularly relating to personal information. So before we can open the door, so to speak, to allow academia into that world, those relationships have to be built and the trust has to be present. And we can do that formally through security vetting and non-disclosure agreements and so on. But fundamentally, those type of relationships and that sort of trust is built on personal interaction. So that has to be present as well. But then the final ingredient that's necessary and wouldn't have been possible to produce this output is the access to data. So what these approaches cannot be built upon is theory alone. They have to be tested on real data and they have to be tested in real world environments. So ultimately all of those preceding steps are getting us to having access to that data. Because from an academic perspective and data science perspective, once we get hold of that, we can work wonders with it. But because it's such personal information and carries such high risk with it, if it's handled inappropriately, getting to that stage isn't straightforward.
Definitely agree, Eric. I think partnerships like these are pivotal in terms of driving innovation and bridging the gaps between the academic and the industry communities. Let me bounce back to Zubin. So, Zubin, how do you view the role of collaborations in fostering advancements in AI and improving compliance outcomes?
So I think when we look at it as, again, we think about it from the consumer perspective as a bank, and we are thinking about this, my problem statement, I need to do it this way. I have a hypothesis. But then when you flip over and bounce the ideas off to a non-banker, non-FI, they may look at it with a different lens. And when they are looking at it from a different lens, they may come up with different sort of solutions which they may have looked at wider researchers or industries, and that can be also brought in. Now, what also comes in is from the world of compliance, we don't deem it as a competitive advantage as such. From us, it's like keeping the financial system safe, so you have all the players involved in it. So if there is an innovation or something which happens at unit A, it's well worth for the others to look at it and try and deploy it at their place or even tweak it at their place to try and use it. So that's where we think that more people having access to this sort of information from an academic research perspective helps the sort of little gears turn in their heads, and possibly we get more input to strengthen the industry.
Thank you, Zubin. Your view on partnerships underscores the importance in creating a real-world impact. Dr. Eric, to conclude, how important do you think it is for academia and the financial sector to align their efforts to address key challenges like money laundering using AI?
Yeah, I think it's essential, and I don't see a world where the financial sector or any other industry can move forward without these sorts of relationships being more common. And the reason for that is, I think, as many people have spoken about today, globalization, digitization, increasing demand, both financial crime, the cyber threat, all of these issues are just going to develop into increasingly wicked problems, which take collaboration to address them. If an industry or a particular organization tries to address these issues alone, they will not succeed. So I think for that perspective, to meet that challenge, that's first and foremost why it's so important. But also why it's important for them to work together is, having come from industry, from a law enforcement background, we face similar challenges. We spend most of our day doing day-to-day business, keeping the floods at bay, and that's what industry is focused on. So they don't have time to lift their head above the parapet and scan the horizon. So academia can do that for them. If that open conversation exists and industry puts forward problems, academia has the time and space to seek out solutions and test them for them. The other good thing that these relationships can do is industry as well also has finite resources. So they don't often have the capacity and capability in human resources or intellectual resources and time and space to look at these issues. Academia is a free resource. As long as those objectives can be aligned. Academia don't charge for these services frequently, so they're there to be accessed free of charge. Any organization, in theory, can build this sort of relationship with a local academic establishment and move forward from there. So as long as they can think of a problem and they can build a relationship to try and address that problem, academia will always be there to help, offer a helping hand. And why is that important? To conclude, I would just say, it will help them meet the emerging demand, because the line graphs on this are only going in one direction. It's increasing exponentially. So without coming up with more innovative technological solutions that use AI, that use machine learning, that access the digital capabilities that are available to us, particularly in this space, organizations won't be able to meet that. And in this example, we saved the equivalent of 45 full-time employees just by implementing this machine learning algorithm. That's a huge amount, from a human perspective, but also from a financial perspective. And that's not to say organizations should use these approaches to cut costs. That's not what we would recommend. But what it does enable them to do is to move those human resources elsewhere in the system to focus on other problems. For instance, in this scenario, the suspicious activity reports, the timeliness that was achieved, we managed to improve that by up to 2/3. So it was happening over 60% quicker than it was previously, because so much human resources have been freed up and enabled that capacity to be focused where it was needed. So if you combine all of those things together, I think they can work valuably together to deal with these issues moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Eric. Your points on tackling complex challenges and enabling regulatory alignment through collaboration underscores the importance of building strong and sustained connections between academia and the financial industry. Ladies and gentlemen, this research initiative is more than just a success story. It demonstrates how leveraging advanced AI models can not only address pressing challenges like money laundering, but also redefine operational efficiency and regulatory compliance. I am pleased to announce that the full research paper developed by the ADGM Academy Research Center and in partnership with Emirates NBD and Rabdan Academy will be soon publicly available on our website. This research project is a testament to what collaboration and innovation can achieve. And I invite you all to read it, share it within your organizations, and consider how you can adopt similar models to transform your own operations. As we conclude, I encourage you to continue exploring how AI can be a driver of positive change in your fields. Together, we can build a smarter, safer, and more resilient financial ecosystem. Thank you for joining us.